You gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. Where's the cash with the amount of work that we did and we're still continuing to do? Then you gotta say, you know, if you was outside in the streets with no phone compared to if you was outside in the streets with a phone, and then what would you be doing with it if you had phone and internet access? And then what's gonna happen then if one of them doesn't have that, and then if one does but then they don't use it? Or if I gotta be up here, do business, go to sleep, wake back up, and now get this whole city popping again. And now I gotta do business again while I still can, because if the city or the state doesn't do it, then guess what? It looks like they're gonna allow every other state to have advantage over their own people in the state of Hawaii. Every other state, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee. So shout out to all of the states, right? But then once I gotta be at my home state and they don't even pass the ball, they don't have bank accounts, I gotta start looking like Hills Have Eyes was onto something. They was making videos out there. They had production. They had distribution. Even though they look crazy, they had bank accounts. Hills Have Eyes had bank accounts, apparently, for distribution, marketing, the new audience budget. Now YouTube, Google, State of Hawaii, and Maui County all apparently don't have money. There's a cash crisis. I was a cash cow, now there's a cash crisis with constant cash. That's not right. The whole city and the whole state owes Joshua Elijah Ford millions of dollars. Trillions, billions, millions of dollars. See, and then it says what? It says Google delivery system failure. When you're sending out important documents, you shouldn't even be allowed to have a system failure if Google was the resource you even used to collect some of the emails from the city, the state, the country. So in the United States, there's different cities, there's different states, and there's different towns, right? Then there's different people who work at each department, and you can find their directory at the state with their name, phone number, and their email. Usually is email, because then you can actually send the documents instead of talk about it on the phone, right? You can actually email them the documents. Then Google does illegal activity by then not allowing the documents to be sent. So even if you have to save somebody and Google allows a maximum, they allow a lot of documents. Then Social Security says you can only have 5-6 megabytes of document. That's smaller than a disc that they used to use for drum machines. That's smaller than a disc they use for drum machines. And those are the people who then have to what? Be able to socially secure everybody else who's working. So yes, we know there's hustlers, right? Where we can stack cash. But here's the thing. Once there's no paychecks and the cash moves different and there's no banking, even though you're a hustler, it changes the way economics actually is. So a lot of people work, but then cash businesses don't hardly last to go global. And then if it's a cash business that has to keep working over and over without the ability to scale, that's when Social Security is able to say, like, okay, we saw them working. They didn't have the ability to scale because wherever they were located, okay, the bank interfered. Maybe that place never had a bank and their currency moved and circulated differently within the city. It didn't have global reach or even state reach. That's when Social Security in each state is supposed to then protect the person who's able to continuously work, because continuous work that's not able to compound and scale, that's then just using cash in the community, and just like you have to be outside and say, like, okay, this is something small, instead of we're selling big devices globally, right? We're selling electronics, we're selling MP3s and songs that go to 200 countries. That means the cash moves differently, and somebody wouldn't be able to keep working without running into health issues. That's when Social Security is like miracles, where they can, if there's cameras and videos in the community, then they know, okay, that's where the checks get to go, because everybody else is in an office with AC being bougie, getting paid to make mistakes, to do wrong accounting, to have an ego, to be mad. They're spending money out the woodwork everywhere, throwing cash in the clubs. They didn't make a song to be in the club. And now they're throwing cash in the clubs, acting like hip hop is back. But these are people in the business offices that are then Social Security supposed to see everybody else. Because if somebody did work with cash, or even worked with scaling, so cash would mean you would need the Social Security assistance, because you can only do that for so long. Then anybody scaling that then can do that longer and go to 200, 300, 400, 500 countries would have to have Social Security, because if they're not getting paid to scale that big, and then if they're in the streets moving money like that fast, physicality and your physical ability would need Medicaid, Medicare, would need assistance, would need dental, even if you're the biggest year over year in the street, because then you're outside, then you have what, weather damage and acts of God. Now you gotta be in the street or try to find vehicles, and then you gotta dodge things, but you're still using money. So you might be moving more like somebody that's from a different state, in a different state or a different community, or even somebody who's then considered maybe an immigrant or something else. We don't like to label or discriminate, but these are some of the people that are able to move cash the most. But you can only do physical 9 to 5 and the night shift for so long. Black Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Cyber Monday, maybe couple more days of all nights. You cannot do that. Even if you're in the business. Say somebody gotta do that in the streets as without a house, right? So somebody that we don't like to label people, but they gotta hustle continuously just with cash, and then not the financial institutes that then are able to scale, or the right people to then just deliver the cash to the right people, so then the community can function. Then there's money circulating, right? So then it's what, finding the people who already have those resources, making sure it's delivered. So then what is it? Is monetization has to then be delivered. If not, then Social Security has to then deliver that amount of monetization. If not, the person who's that smart is then in the streets again. That's not a bad thing, but that's not then the most productive to help anybody else that could then benefit from not being in the streets. So then If he does that much work and the mayor gotta do something, then it looks kind of crazy, right? Because then he did more global work in different countries than the mayor, but then the mayor is not outside circulating cash in the streets though. So then what's happening? The mayor has the ability, the county and the different people in the office have the ability to move money quick, fast, and to see that even when they use the cameras. So cameras aren't used to label people and then be defensive against them, the customers and the clients, even the ones who aren't able to look pretty, right? That's used to then get the money to them in order for it to flow to everybody else. So then if you get it to the streets, right, or to people that's homeless, or the ones who worked more than everybody else but then aren't getting the funds, you have to fix it because the money only gets to everybody else back into the businesses again. So then businesses are losing money because you're not getting money to the people in the streets. The people in the streets go to the businesses to spend it back again. That means it's gonna be circulated back again, but you're just slowing the top of the funnel, which is monetization, remittance you're slowing restitution, you're slowing settlements, and then you're slowing Social Security. That all goes back into the community, then it might go to the city, and then it might go to the state and different countries again. But you cannot slow this process down and then stop it for the people who move cash the fastest in the actual streets at night, and then the ones who use technology. So that might be the same person, right, in running the streets with cash, even though then they withdraw it all from my bank account illegally. Now I gotta go back outside, try to think of what kind of master plan can happen if we don't really got it like that, or have the banking, or then have monetization, settlements, remittance, or even different restitutions not coming into play, and then acting like, why is the community not moving? Why are people starving? Why is medical making people pull out all their teeth? And then why is the stores not having new products, new things we want, and everything is slow? Because all the cash from the top of the funnel, from the state of Hawaii, the county of Maui, especially the people who do the work, it would have to go to them, and the people that then need assistance that don't know how or are on zero and cannot, you gotta help them enough that they can pay everybody, even get it to back to the mayor, able to get back to me easy. Just because if I'm online, then all of that would, especially the county and the state addressing that would address banking issues immediately. And then that would also address Social Security immediately, because after that much work done, I cannot be in the streets. That means everybody else in the entire community that didn't make the biggest YouTube channels, businesses, and then what? Then they're gonna say, no, it's not. They can still do that without doing 100 songs. Okay, give them the ball. Give the person on the field that didn't run 100 yards the ball. Give the person the ball that's not Curry to shoot behind the three-pointer. What happens? Put an eagle on it. It just looks stupid for the whole city, the whole state, even the county. Because then somebody else would be able to help the person that started on zero, or the person on zero would show that they could actually climb to the top. So now in the city, if they don't address banking, especially Social Security, and actual use of cameras not being illegal, and video and audio, there's gonna be no money. That's when it's a policing state that doesn't actually know why you would police in the state. That means it's just policing that's doing stupidity, and then the top of the chain of county, they lost their minds, which have to actually flow the money. Say somebody has an ego at the desk. I don't know if they should have the money or not. that person just stopped the money by thinking that. It's not getting to anybody to the store, and it's not that person's money who works at the county or the clerk or personnel or whatever department. They're saying, I don't know if I should type that in Social Security. Yeah, but it's not your money, and you're not going to move fast enough in the community to get it to all the businesses that then need cash or that then need actual banking. So sometimes people like to say, why does he sound like that? Because that's then a what? A exclamation mark, a state of emergency mark, and a attention mark. We cannot all be in La La Land in the entire state. And then it happens from little leagues to major leagues. And then nobody can actually have room for growth. Especially if one person keeps doing it back to back. So then the person who takes over media is the only one everybody views, and then nobody makes money, especially that person too. Because if they're the one that's always on media, always with the views and the technology, that means everybody else don't have the money to enter, and then they're not gonna make any money back from it, whether they're outside or even in the office or even at the bank. Crazy, right? But that's why distribution, capital management, and even capital cash allocation in the city is important without an ego, without the person in personnel or banking saying, well, if I write this, no, you have to write it because it says that right there on the paper, and that's the amount that goes into their banking, or else who on earth would ever even have that number in front of them and then be on more technology than the bank itself in a place that then they're acting like is sovereign or third world, but then have all the resources to not have that, because nobody doesn't want to be able to not drink water. Everybody in the state capital, the city and county, they're passing out water bottles. That's then what? That's not sovereign anymore. Because you would have to go drink from the pond and then go wash your clothes out of the valley, not the laundromat that then collects cash and banking, but then is going to continue to collapse. And we don't want to talk like that. We want to be able to move money quick with payment processing and without egos to the people that's homeless and to the hustlers that gotta keep moving. The people that's homeless just gotta learn to hustle. They need enough money and capital that they know where to even go. Then the hustlers that made enough gotta keep making enough that their clientele and their communication still know what's happening in the chain of command. Just up and down, smooth processes without an ego. Okay, we got that. Your paycheck just made you $6,000. Don't act like somebody else cannot make $1 million. You just got 6,000, 10,000 out of nowhere. The person who make $1 million probably never seen cash like that from the person in the state with the ego. They had to hustle probably even years until they saw the $1 million off of not ever hitting probably 20,000 in 2 months like somebody that work at the state. Even though they're more big bands, able to communicate, probably went to college already, probably do research and due diligence and know the people then as well. But they didn't make money like that. 2 weeks now they make $8,000 with the state. Just because you don't know how to use the internet does not mean they don't get their money. That means they get their monetization, they get their remittance. If they work at Google and YouTube, then the state gotta say, why are they not getting paid from Google and YouTube, and why are we not giving them the money? Because it's not gonna get back to Office Max, it's not gonna get back to Office Depot. It's where everybody in the community works. Kinko's, it's not gonna get back to the university, it's not gonna get back to manufacturing, distribution, it's not gonna get back to FedEx, the postal service, because it gotta get to everybody in the community. What good is Social Security if they're just sleeping on checks slower than the rest of the community in the office? They got AC computers and they're fast and they get paid. It's like miracles in there, but it cannot get to the rest of the community. Why is that? Especially the one on the internet and in the streets and in the business office. How could I go through all of these different tax brackets, different sectors, but then show that, okay, there's no money here? I'm in the same place. There's supposed to be enough money where it shows me in 10 places even giving away stuff. Not me gotta go back to what charity work from zero, acting like I'm ringing a bell in the community while I'm online in 200 countries. Somebody in certain states and cities and even countries, even in Mexico. Shout out to all the cities and the states and the countries. Shout out to Hawaii. Shout out to United States. Shout out to Mexico. It's all peace, love, and happiness, right? But it's the personnel in these offices that aren't communicating and getting the money fast to the people so that what? Lines, communication, chronological order, all easy. All shaking hands, making money, and it's like a economic boom. Right now, it's like everybody's living in scarcity. The prices are going through the roof, and they don't know how distribution works from people that can write checks. It's coming from a trust that can automatically put any number there if the person can even fathom it or even make it. Because then there's not even enough education or knowledge for people to understand, okay, I don't know what number that is. I don't know what that says if it doesn't have the amount of millions, billions, trillions, quintillions, quadrillions, sextillions. Like, people don't even know what the math or a number is with a zero. So if I go into the bank or if I'm online and talking about monetization, that's where the money's supposed to go. Even if it's not being monetized, that's when the state, the county, and even the city will step in with banking, accounting, and even the trust fund in personnel, different offices, financial office, right? Would be able to print that easy. It would get to the community, and then it would be like Black Friday, it would be like Christmas, not only waiting for one day and one person. Imagine the community was waiting for one day only and one person. And they're like, where are they? I see them online. But every time I see them spend money. But I cannot find them. Hardly to show back up. That's a very interesting thing, and that just shows that there's ego in the state. There's no ego that's supposed to be in the state, even if you gotta pass millions or billions or trillions to an individual. Why? Because people who work at the state, they get accommodations, they get their health taken care of, they get to eat lunch. They're not a venture capital or have to go to startup. They have air conditioning and water bottles, and they get to live a slower life and make thousands of dollars even in 1 week. They didn't come up with a brand new idea, still thousands of dollars. They didn't have to write 50 records, still $10,000 in 1 week. That's not what the hustler that has to then go back to the streets and build a corporation. That's not how you could treat that, because then that's bigger than the state. Then that's when you run into interferences, because the state, you cannot then say, but I don't like this person, but I do. No, it's the work done. The work done is already sent to the state and the bank. And if there's only one bank in the community, and that's First Hawaiian Bank, because the first Hawaiians had to bank, if everybody then loses their bank, because if you replicate philosophy one to everybody there, the whole entire community would shut down. Then there wouldn't be people that can actually think of the word sovereign. They would only be living like cannibals and savages with no cash. Now we're back to the 1700s, and now there's this and that again. How about let's just have the money flow, even like New York, even like Cali, even like Texas, even like Minnesota, Oregon, without egos. That means people like Mark Wahlberg, Mark Zuckerberg, other individuals, 20 years ago, they already made billions from their city and state. And now the state is letting Mark Zuckerberg put up random things that don't generate. So it's not even generating. They're letting them put it in the biggest places in the cities, right? But then it's not, the people don't know him. They don't have access to him. Then they're going to say, but yes, they do. Now there's a place they can go. But no, they don't, because they cannot afford to do that or even have the education to learn that, especially if you walk in there and none of your work gets monetized. So if you say, hey, let me go walk to the Meta store and buy something and then use it on social media, if it doesn't get monetized in the city, the state, or the platform itself, then again, that's not going to do anything. Even if we love the person, it doesn't mean we got to hate them or love them. Hate it or love it, the underdogs on top. That means the person did the work to get on top. You could hate it or love it, but they did the mathematical equation in order to do business. That would be of net plus, and then not have financial interferences by the state, by the police, by security, and even financial interferences and torturous interference by the bank itself. Then philosophy at college isn't even doing philosophy at college to then have the community then be in abundance or having a miracle mindset. Then it's one person, one by one, is just losing everything. Now we see everybody's cars outside and everybody just outside. Instead of with multiple houses, multiple cars, enough room to have separation and then go talk to each other, enough money for people that don't have money to then make more and then become professional, or have the professionals actually get their paycheck. And now I gotta, so imagine I'm in the suit, I do cases already, I gotta go represent myself with my lawyer already, I gotta do business bigger than the county already, because there's not enough resources to help me do business, or there's just an ego that doesn't put the resources into play that helps the business expand. So now I gotta take off my suit. So I gotta take off the suit, I gotta put the gold on, and I gotta go run back outside and just do what it does from the beginning. That's how we go state to state international, but it's purposely created that way. Usually once you put the suit on, you have enough money and you don't gotta ever take the suit off. That means you got millions and you could go stay where it is, or you could wear the suit in your community. Once they mess up the economics and the monetization, I gotta take the suit off, the shirt off, and I gotta be back to hustling, and I gotta speak differently with urgency and exclamations instead of soft like R&B. Very interesting, right? So then you cannot hate them or love them when security issues, monetization issues, because then who is the message getting to? That's of importance. And then why is it not being funded if it's that important in the work, and especially in the globe, right? So shout out to my real ones tuning in. We're doing work behind the scenes, but then we gotta break down why you see us doing the work differently behind the scenes later. So after high school, after straight into the pros, after I'm in college already, after then I do business out of college and do sales, That's why then you see it what it is. Then it's long hair again, it's jewelry again, it's we're doing pants and no shirt and we're running around just as the flyest. But we do that on media because what? We gotta actually have, so every time we show the cash in our hand, if we can show that, that means the state is not actually paying us enough. So every time somebody said, "Oh, but look, he has money in his hand," that means that's the streets because the state isn't paying enough to have this much money then, or to not show it and have it in a bank account. If I cannot then show the money in a duffel bag or in a backpack, that means the state continues to not fund, but I continue to use internet, I continue to use telecommunications, I continue to use trillion-dollar corporations to distribute, I continue to use monetization that isn't being monetized. It's showing all of these resources. I'm continuing to stay alive while spending that amount and then still showing this. And then if I gotta show doctor paperwork or anything, and then they just act like, I don't know, I'm clueless, I don't know finances, then I gotta look at each doctor and each lawyer like they're stupid, literally. So then you're actually causing people harm. Because if I'm just showing this amount of money and this would then make me homeless if I cannot give this away, or then show this amount, that means that's illegal activity from the state, the county, the city, and then even different states that would then look at each state, right? So the country and the United States. So then if I'm showing this and then I'm breaking down my content in a different form or with urgency, a different tone, or my look looks, maybe I don't have a fresh haircut. So everybody's saying, oh, you should cut your hair, you should do this. Yeah, but that means that you didn't even give me enough money to think about that and I'm still working. Or you didn't give me enough money to not say, to have your ego say something that stupid while you're supposed to distribute the money. Or you're somebody who's a doctor that's older than the person and then they say, yeah, but I don't know finances. Yeah, but then why do you have better clothes than the person? Why do you have a house and then the patient or the client doesn't? That means you cannot legally even act stupid. If not, give me all your money, your clothes, and your house and your car. That's how it works, because then if I keep showing this, that means the city and the state is literally, even if they make $1 million, even if somebody's an engineer or a policeman or this or that, they're literally stupid in real life. And I like to call everybody smart geniuses and make miracles happen in the city. But then as a general, a sergeant, as a Marine or a Navy or a U.S. SEAL or in the Army, the general or the chain of command, whoever is in charge at that time, is going to say everybody is stupid and start yelling at them. Because how is the platoon, the fraction, the function, how the base, how is everybody supposed to be there? What we doing? Blowing up cars, spending money, and all eating at the same time, but nobody's on a phone generating cash. Even the police. So yes, saving people, that's important. But then saving people without the money, that means you're just stupid. Because then nothing is about to happen. And the person who keep acting like they're saving somebody as the police or as the doctor, you're not doing nothing. They gotta just go in there because they don't have water and they don't have food. And now they're using the same resources not in the best interest because you're not even giving them water and food from the hospital. The hospital can write checks for water and food easy. Easy. That's the state. That's the trust of the hospital. Even the trust of the state. That means the money gotta function and flow, but everybody else is just stupid and lazy. I cannot say that, right? Because each individual is still hustling. They just saved somebody on the field. They just took care of somebody. But then if they're not getting compensated, especially the person that, what if the person is richer and they're the one that pay the hospital, the police, and then it's coming from them, but you gotta keep saving them just because you're not giving them water. This is the president. Okay, I gotta check in. And then they gotta figure out, so what's wrong with the president? Nobody gave him water today. Everybody else is being bougie. Nobody gave him $1 to buy water from the rest of the department that's all drinking water, blowing personnel money.